Welcome to Sarah Wood's Tale, where stories comes alive. Please do well to hit that subscription button and turn on your notification bell for subsequent stories. The rain fell in heavy sheets, drumming against the rusted tin roofs of the slum houses. The narrow alley smelled of damp earth, smoke, and desperation. Grace Miller clutched Lily's tiny hand, her fingers cold but firm. They stood outside a run-down shack, their home, now occupied by a new tenant. The landlord had thrown them out an hour ago, their few belongings scattered in the mud. "Aunt Grace," Lily whimpered, shivering. "Where will we go?" Grace tightened her grip. "Don't be scared, baby. We'll find a place." But deep inside, she felt hollow. How much longer could she pretend everything was fine? How much longer could she keep fighting a world she couldn't even see? Suddenly, she heard the low hum of an approaching car, a smooth, expensive engine, completely out of place in this part of town. A vehicle like that had no business being here. The sound stopped in front of them. A door opened, followed by the firm click of expensive shoes on wet pavement. Then, a deep voice. "Do you need help?" Grace stiffened. The voice was rich and smooth, filled with quiet authority. She turned her head slightly, relying on sound to place the man. He was close, just a few feet away. "We're fine," she said, straightening her back. "You don't look fine," the man replied. She exhaled sharply. "I don't take charity." There was a pause, then a sigh. "It's not charity. It's a chance." Grace felt Lily lean against her, exhausted. She had no choice. "Who are you?" "Alexander Carter." The name sent a ripple through her memory. She'd heard it before, on the radio, in conversations she wasn't meant to hear. A billionaire. A ruthless businessman. A man feared and respected. "Why would a man like you stop for a blind woman and a child?" she asked. There was a brief hesitation before he answered. "Because I know what it's like to be left in the rain." The sincerity in his voice made her waver. She had spent years rejecting pity. But this didn't feel like pity. "Where are you taking us?" "Somewhere safe." Against every instinct, she nodded. The car was warm, the leather seats smooth under her fingers. Lily clutched her hand tightly, whispering, "Is he a good man, Aunt Grace?" Grace hesitated. "I don't know yet." The ride was silent, but she could feel Alexander's presence beside her. He didn't try to fill the silence with empty words. When the car stopped, she was led into a space that smelled of wood, expensive cologne, and something foreign, wealth. "This is my home," Alexander said. Home was an understatement. She could hear the vastness in the echoes of her footsteps. "A maid will show you to your room," he added. Grace turned toward him. "Why are you doing this?" There was another pause, a long one this time. "Let's just say, I owe someone like you a debt." His voice was softer now, almost nostalgic. But she didn't press. Days passed. Then weeks. Grace learned to navigate the mansion through memory. She spent her mornings with Lily and her nights wondering why a man like Alexander Carter had taken them in. One evening, she found herself on the balcony, feeling the cool breeze on her face. She heard footsteps, strong, steady. "I thought you'd be asleep," Alexander said. "I don't sleep much," she replied. A moment of silence stretched between them. Then she asked, "What did you mean when you said you owed someone like me a debt?" Alexander exhaled. "When I was a kid, I was homeless. Cold. Hungry. A blind girl gave me her last piece of bread." Grace felt her heart skip. "She told me something," he continued. "She said kindness doesn't need sight, it needs a heart." Her breath caught. Those were her words. She was that girl. "That was you, wasn't it?" Alexander whispered. Tears burned in her eyes. "Yes." Their bond grew. He spent time with Lily, teaching her how to swim. He asked Grace about her jewelry, her dreams. And Grace, she started to feel something dangerous. Hope. Then, one night, she overheard a conversation. A hushed voice, serious and regretful. "It's true, sir. The company was behind the slum demolition years ago. Grace Miller's family was among the casualties. A cold weight settled in her chest. Alexander Carter was the reason she lost everything. She felt sick. Betrayed. That night, she waited for him. When he entered the room, she turned toward him, voice shaking. "You destroyed my home," she said. The silence was suffocating. "Grace. My parents died because of you," she whispered. "All this time, I thought you were my savior. But you were my destroyer." "Grace, I didn't know," he said, voice raw. She laughed bitterly. "You, a billionaire, didn't know what your company did." He stepped closer. "If I could undo it, I would. I swear, I will make it right." "You can't." Her voice broke. "You can never bring them back." Tears streamed down her face as she turned away. And then she left. Days passed. Grace refused to see him. She tried to rebuild her life, but the truth was, she had nowhere to go. Then, a knock. A hesitant voice. "Aunt Grace, he's fixing everything." Lily's words made her pause. "What do you mean?" "He's rebuilding the houses that were destroyed. He said he's giving the land back to the people. And he found a doctor." Grace's hands clenched. "A doctor?" "For your eyes," Lily whispered. "He said there's a surgery that might let you see again." Her heart pounded. She had accepted her blindness long ago. But now, there was a choice. The surgery was terrifying. The bandages were suffocating. Then, light. Shapes. Colors. And the first thing she saw was him. Alexander stood at the foot of her bed, eyes filled with something she had never been able to see before. Pain. Hope. Love. Tears blurred her vision as she reached out. When his fingers touched hers, she whispered, "I may have been blind, but I always saw you." His breath hitched. "And I spent my whole life searching for you." He dropped to his knees, pressing her hands against his face. "Forgive me, Grace. Please." She studied his face, the man she had hated, the man who had saved her, the man she had come to love. And she knew the truth. Love wasn't about sight. It was about trust. And she had already seen his heart. They walked through the rebuilt streets, Alexander, Grace, and Lily. The slum was no longer a slum. It was a home. "Do you see it, Aunt Grace?" Lily asked, eyes shining. Grace smiled, squeezing Alexander's hand. "Yes, baby. I see it." And for the first time in a long time, the world was beautiful. Please don't forget to subscribe to get more interesting stories like this.